So I've reviewed a lot of card decks that help you think differently. But this one, the Leadership Story Deck by David Hutchins, not only helps you spark new ideas and concepts, but it helps you find your own stories and share them and connect with people in a more meaningful way. Hey, my name is Werner Puchert, and I believe that most of the world's problems are just interesting design challenges in disguise. So why stories? Our CEO once said to us, hey, we really need our customers to trust us again. So it sounded simple at the beginning, but when we had a closer look, we realized the issue wasn't out there, it was in here. And when I say in here, it was inside the business. We weren't speaking the same language across teams when it came to customer experience. So instead of promising trust, we started building it inside the company at first. Now this story continues with the deliverables, what we did, the impact. And what I've noticed is that every time I tell the story, people appreciate the story about the CEO more than the actual facts and output. The fact that we changed the mind or kind of went against what the CEO asked us was the hook of the story. Just like my Polish mother-in-law, we all have a good story to tell. But sometimes we just need a little bit of a bridge to help us clarify things, not just in the right direction, connect fragmented thoughts, or like in my case, stop you from rambling on about things. Tighten things up so you can hit the mark every time you tell your story. Now, let me show you how this bridge works. So if you open up this box, the first thing you get is the manual, and it's really comprehensive, really focusing on how to use the cards in a context that might suit you. So it goes all the way from using as an individual straight through to group settings, and then also the one that I've used to test the tool, really how you could develop a talk or a presentation. Then you have a set of 27 themes, I would say, story themes. So you can build individual stories based on each of these cards. So there's 27 of them. And then I'll also unpack this later because I used this for the work I did with this toolkit, is a set of 3 cards consisting out of 6 narrative recipes, I guess you could call it. So let's have a closer look at one of these cards. The theme is a leader with conviction. More, what does that actually mean? Further, the text says, for you, this work isn't just business, it's personal. You're here in this role, project, or organization because you believe. Engage people in the work by letting them know this is who you are and you are driven by a sense of urgency. Your conviction is contagious. So it's a contextual information around the specific theme. Now the tool goes further to build a bridge into what makes it relevant for you. How can you find your story? And you'll see here, why are you here? This role, this project, this organization. The challenge for you to come up with your story is, tell me about a moment when you started to realize this is who you are and where you belong. Now, I'm sure as you listen to this, you can either start thinking of stories, or maybe this video is completely out of context for you. You're going like, what is going on? But the author has your back. Pardon pun, because at the back here is an example story. So I'm not going to read off the full story, but for a leader with conviction, the story here is I needed data to save her. It's a title. And it actually tells a story of a paramedic, where a paramedic started working, and then ultimately it goes down to the deliverable, to the professional setting, right? So you can see a perfect example of a story that relates to this theme. And there's many different themes here that you can explore. So one of the ways that you can use the card deck, if you start thinking about or want to explore some of your own case studies, your own stories, you can just scan through the card deck and challenge yourself, read these prompts and challenge yourself to see if you have any stories to tell. So you have the burning platform, the vision, conversion, I was blind, but now I believe, moments of impact, origin vision. There's a ton here. I've mentioned that you can go and sit and go through this card deck and explore and find your own stories, but you can also do it with your team. So one of the ways that Dave recommends you do this is just to go sit with your team together, maybe in groups of 2, and then go through the card deck and explore the different themes to see if there's stories that you and your team can tell. The other way to do it is to share the card deck with the team and then individually have people go through, select some of the cards that the individual thinks could be interesting stories that the team could tell, and then in the group share why you think some of these stories are interesting to tell. Now, the tools that I review, I really go out and use, and I really wanted to go out and use the cards to build a presentation that I'm going to be doing soon around some work we've done. I started exploring Dave's narrative recipes that you have, and I've mentioned this a little while ago. So the story narrative recipe that I grabbed: sharing knowledge or fostering a learning organization. So the first thing that you then do is that you go and look at the combination of cards that it challenges you to go and find. So I did that. I have 11, 22, 8, and you can see here that I'm really using them. Then what you do is you go out and look and see if there is stories, because of course I have my theme in mind and the concepts that I want to share. Do they resonate? Now, in the case of the presentation that I'm doing, I couldn't really find a match or stories to tell around the 8, 11, and 22. But Dave's got you back. You have alternative stories that you can explore within the context of sharing knowledge or fostering a learning organization. So I then went away and I identified 14, 17 and 18 as the stories that I want to tell within my presentation. But I was really surprised how these different stories come together and then still delivers a narrative arc. The other thing that I found interesting, and I'm getting geeky about this, is that in my case, I could really see how this made me think further, help me build a narrative, but then also remember the narrative without having to rely on slides. And now the last part I'm doing is really putting the lipstick, building the slides. So really effective and still a work in progress. So this review might still leave you a little bit lacking, especially if you're thinking, how do I tell the actual story? Now I have a theme, how do I tell the story? And there is a card in the card deck itself that unpacks kind of how you go through telling the story. So there's the situation, this is the problem we faced, this is the action we took, then the ultimate results, and then a key insight, for example. However, Dave also brought to the table something that I'm of course going to geek out about, is a story canvas, right? So this is downloadable. You can buy a physical copy, but then also, like I did, drop it into Mural and start filling out and building out your stories in a digital space. Then, but wait, there's more. Dave recently wrote a book called Story Dash. And then as kind of a booster pack to the leadership story deck, you also have a bunch of cards here that really relates to stories where you have to create engagement and belief so people will act. So kind of like the idea that there's a little booster pack to the leadership story deck. You can go to storytellingleader.com, the deck, the booster pack, the canvases, Dave's books, Dave's content, super helpful. I think you can also find the deck on Amazon, depending on where you live. And then I also wanted to mention, because a good friend of mine, Stephen P. Anderson, introduced me to this card deck a while ago, and I was aiming to get it. And I got the lead through his newsletter, Thinking Things, super helpful. If you geek out around tools like this and you want to know more about things that help you think, join Stephen's newsletter. And then with that, let me know if you have any cool stories to tell. And as always, thanks for watching, and catch you in the comments.